First developments are like first children. They turn your life upside down and end up costing much more than you'd planned. As Liz and Laura, the window dressing duo from Maidstone in Kent, found out.
You went to an auction to buy a house that you hadn't seen and you hadn't had a survey done.
Yeah.
That's right.
You're off your rockers.
For Liz and Laura, this semi was just the first of many projects in what they hoped would be a lucrative new career and a permanent escape from window dressing. 18 months later, they're more ambitious than ever and certainly not afraid of a challenge.
And do you know anything about building a new house?
Bought a book.
Yeah, and we've seen some architects now, so we know a little bit more.
Right.
After 28 years of window dressing, Liz Rivers and Laura Sexton have had enough. In an attempt to expand their horizons and their bank balances, they've decided to launch a new career in property developing. So they've remortgaged their own homes and bought their first development, this small terraced property in Maidstone.
We first saw it on the internet, in the auction catalogue, and then we just went into the estate agents and picked the catalogue up, went through it and...
Popped out, had a look and decided to buy it.
And how much did you buy it for?
90,000.
90,000.
Yes.
And what are you planning on spending on it?
5,000.
In total?
In
5,000.
total, yes.
Right. And how much do you hope to sell it for?
Well, we understand that the going price for this sort of property is probably about 115, but we're hoping for 120.
Liz and Laura bought the property on impulse at an auction for £90,000. They plan to spend a modest £5,000 on all the renovations. And they hope to sell it for £120,000. After taking into account £3,000 for legal fees, they hope to make a gross profit of £22,000, which would be a great start to their new business venture.
And what are you going to do with all that money?
Put it into the next one, hopefully.
I want to see inside. Let's go and have a look.
OK.
Liz and Laura can't afford to give up their day jobs yet, so all the work on the house has to be done in their spare time.
It's a little bit of work here.
The house is a 2 up, 2 down and typical of the area. Upstairs, Liz and Laura plan to redecorate the 2 double bedrooms. They plan to rip out the bathroom and install a new suite. Downstairs there are 2 connecting reception rooms which lead onto a small back kitchen. Outside there's a narrow, neglected back garden in need of care and attention. Inside they plan to transform the reception rooms into comfortable living areas, but this is where I can already see problems.
We have a ceiling problem here. The polystyrene tiles have got to go.
They often put these on because the ceilings were very cracked. So you might find that as you take them off, you'll have to skim the ceiling as well as that ceiling.
Yeah, I think basically we'll end up doing all the ceilings. While we've got a plasterer in doing 1 or 2, then, you know, hopefully you'll be able to come and do the whole thing. That fireplace is going.
That's amazing, because it's a real of its period.
It certainly is, isn't it? Yeah.
And in about 20, 30 years' time, people will say, oh, how terribly you ripped it out.
Yes, we want a red fireplace back again.
Exactly.
That's right.
As window dressers, Liz and Laura have a great eye for style and detail. But to develop this house successfully, they will need to be focused and know how to prioritise their budget. The small back kitchen is the key room in this house that needs attention.
We've got a lot of appliances to fit into this small space. That is our biggest problem.
But what appliances have you got to fit into here?
Washing machine.
Or at least plumbing for a washing machine. Cooker and hob.
And fridge and freezer.
Fridge and freezer. I mean, yes, it would have been nice to put a dishwasher in, but...
At the moment, we haven't actually cited
a dishwasher.
a location for it.
So where are you planning on putting the units in the kitchen?
Look, all the way around, basically.
So round here,
yeah.
round here and round here.
Yeah, because people need cupboard space, don't they? They need to be able to put things away.
They plan to fill the kitchen with as many units and appliances as possible. But I think they will be over-cluttering the space, and this will make the kitchen feel even smaller. My advice to them would be to remove the units from one wall. and remove the door and part of the wall to open up the space. If they use the same flooring throughout, it will integrate the kitchen and make the rest of the downstairs feel larger and more spacious.
But you need to research a lot into the kitchen because that's a very awkward space.
Yeah. And it's usually the room that sells a house.
Absolutely. So you've got to make it amazing.
So far, Liz and Laura's plans look good. If they decorate throughout and follow my advice about the kitchen, I think they do stand a good chance of making a healthy profit from their investment. They have split their £5,000 budget up as follows. They've allocated £2,100 for the kitchen, £700 for the bathroom and garden, £1,200 for all the decoration including the flooring and lighting, and only £1,000 for all the minor building works like plastering the walls and ceilings. The budget is tight and there's no contingency if anything goes wrong. But Liz and Laura already have another idea for the house which hasn't been included in this budget. They also want to convert the cellar.
We'll make it usable. It's not just going to be a storeroom.
Okay.
So we want to incorporate it in some way into the house, even if it's going to be a playroom or a utility room or something like that.
And have you researched into whether that's actually going to add value to the property?
No.
We just assumed it would.
We just assumed it would. People want more rooms, more space.
If this was my property, I wouldn't touch the cellar. It involves major work which is too expensive for this particular development. I'm worried that Liz and Laura are not thinking like property developers and are not being realistic.
Did you have a survey before you bought the property at all?
Don't want to talk about that bit.
No. Did you not have a survey?
There wasn't actually enough time.
You just bought it?
Yeah.
Well, Laura did because I was in Turkey on holiday.
So you hadn't seen it?
No, not at all.
You then went to an auction to buy a house that you hadn't seen and you hadn't had a survey done?
Yeah.
That's right.
You're off your rockers.
So Liz and Laura both remortgaged their own homes to buy a house that they know nothing about from an auction. Before you risk everything buying a property to develop, there are certain factors which must be taken into consideration. Firstly, make sure you buy your property for the right price. Laura got carried away at the auction and paid 90 grand for their property, 5 grand more than it was really worth in its unmodernised state. Secondly, set yourself a realistic sale price. Liz and Laura want to sell their house for $120,000, even though the ceiling price for this type of property in the area is only $110,000. This would cut their potential profit in half. Thirdly, set yourself a realistic budget for all the work. Liz and Laura have no building experience and haven't had a survey, so they have no real idea of what they're getting into. Fourthly, find out about the area and your market. As Maidstone is only 40 miles away from London and as house prices are still relatively cheap, they should be marketing their property towards young families and first-time buyers. So remember, always buy your property for the right price. Set yourself a realistic budget. If necessary, this means getting expert advice. Set yourself a realistic sale price. Always consider your market and the needs of your potential buyer and renovate accordingly. Despite my misgivings, Liz and Laura still want to convert the cellar. They're asking their local estate agents their advice.
Do come in.
They are the experts when it comes to selling property and can tell you what improvements will and won't add value.
If it were me, I would definitely leave the cellar alone and spend the money upstairs.
Basically looking to do it up and sell it on again. And I think the money that you're going to spend on it to get it as you want it, you're not going to recoup that.
I had a quick look down there earlier, and obviously there's a lot of work to be done. It smells a bit damp and musty. I think you could spend an awful lot of money there and not necessarily recoup it.
So the consensus is that a cellar conversion won't add value. This is because the layout of the house already works. It only has 2 bedrooms, so the balance of the house is right with 2 reception rooms. But Liz and Laura just can't let go of their vision for the cellar.
We've had lots of conflicting things with the cellar, but mainly everybody has said that we should keep it as storage. Unfortunately, that's not quite enough for Laura and I. We want to make it look like a room and give people the idea that if they want to convert it legally into a living space, they could see that it's possible.
Property developing is all about profit. It's about spending money where it's needed as efficiently as possible, but you do have to do the work properly, and a cheap cosmetic job on the cellar just doesn't count. But Liz and Laura are undeterred and have asked Tony, a local builder to the house, to quote for all the building work, including work to the basement. Their budget is just £1,000.
So, break the news to us, Tony.
Your basement is your major one?
Yeah.
What you were telling me yesterday, yeah?
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot more work going on there, so do that 850.
850?
Yeah. So the minimal quote will be 2,280.
Yeah.
All right?
Now that they have found out how much their plans are going to cost them, I hope Liz and Laura see sense.
And that will be 250.
They have only allocated £1,000 for all the building works, so any extra work will mean less profit. But what did they think?
I think we're spending a major part of, well, it is a major part, apart from the kitchen, it's the major part of our budget going into the basement. But I think that's where we see the biggest results.
I didn't realise Sarah was going to come every day to help us.
Oh no, it's a bonus. I'm actually finished.
Liz and Laura have only given themselves 12 weeks to get this project completed. So it's all hands on deck as work starts.
Oh, it might be jewels.
Yeah, right.
As they've not had a survey, I just hope they don't uncover any major problems.
It's our job, just to make things that look horrible look really good so that everyone wants to buy them.
Making things look good is one thing, but they need to get a grip on their building work and budget. I'm concerned that unless they start to focus on the important aspects of property developing, they stand to lose everything. Three years ago, good friends and business partners Liz Rivers and Laura Sexton bought this house in Maidstone at auction, with dreams of developing it on a budget of just £5,000, before selling it on for a £22,000 profit. But they were insisting on doing a cellar makeover that I think was going to send them way over budget.
Good morning, got your window here.
Oh, hello, yeah, come in.
This window will look nice and is making the dark cellar much lighter. Putting in this window is costing Liz and Laura an extra £80.
Right, just got a small problem with the window, ladies. What's happened here? We put it in flush with the opening like you wanted.
But it doesn't comply with building regulations for a cellar conversion, partly because it doesn't open far enough to be used as a fire escape.
Looks good, doesn't it?
Liz and Laura still think that making their house look good will be enough to get them the top price for this property. Instead of spending their budget on the cellar, they should be making sure their house is fundamentally sound, looking at things like the roof, guttering, damp patches and repointing. But instead, Liz and Laura are upstairs doing what they know best, choosing colour schemes for the house.
Right, so what we've got to do is we've got to decide what colourings are going on these walls here.
We're going to put this on the table, aren't we?
But downstairs, there's a problem. Now that the ceiling tiles are off in the dining room, it's apparent the whole ceiling must be replaced. Liz and Laura are only 3 weeks into the development, and already the building work is mounting up, and so are the costs.
I like that. I think that next one down's too dark.
I'm getting worried about where their priorities lie. Liz and Laura have been window dressers for the last 25 years and are convinced that they can make a seamless leap from the shop window to property developing using a few simple tricks of their trade.
grouping is really important. It's important in the window. The space is just as important as
in your home.
You know, in the merchandise and that you put in.
I mean, even when you've got your accessories, things like your storage jars on your kitchen work surface and that, if they're grouped properly, they look better. They still do the same function, but they can look better at the same time. So hopefully we'll take our display side of things and use it as property developers.
But before they can start playing with accessories, they need to get a grip on the building work and concentrate on how they are going to make this tiny kitchen look much larger. It's important when property developing to be able to look at an awkward space and come up with creative solutions. As I suggested, Tony is knocking down the doorway between the kitchen and the dining room to open up the space. Liz and Laura now have other plans for him. They want him to reposition the cellar door from the kitchen to the dining room. Moving the cellar doorway is a good idea, as it will create more floor space for units and is worth the additional cost. But the kitchen is still small, so they need to think hard about how to fit in all their appliances. There's always a solution, but to find it you need to do your research. I'm taking them shopping to a place that specialises in small kitchens.
The other great way of saving space is to have slimline appliances. Here, this is a slimline cooker. Actually, it does everything that a normal cooker would do, but it's 450 wide instead of 600.
Using scaled-down appliances in their small kitchen is an excellent way to fit in all the mod cons.
And look at this. Fantastic mini washing machine.
Although these specialist kitchen companies are often more expensive than high street stores, I think that this extra cost would be a worthwhile investment. They are also great places to steal ideas.
If you don't have much worktop, this is another brilliant thing, is that you can have your worktop in a drawer, and then when you don't want it anymore, you can just pop it away.
Liz and Laura have only a £5,000 budget to spend on their whole development. They should be using the majority of this money in the kitchen, but instead they're throwing it away by doing a half job on the cellar. Although I don't think it's right for this property, cellar conversions can be a good way of adding value, but only if they're done properly. This 5-bedroom house in London had only 2 reception rooms and a kitchen. The owners were desperate for more living space and decided to invest in a cellar conversion rather than moving. But they did it properly. They dug out the floor in order to create more head height, underpinned the walls, damp-proofed and installed a large window which provided constant ventilation and a fire escape. This conversion was expensive, as it cost £100,000. But because it was done properly and it balanced the house, the owners covered their costs and added £50,000 on top to the value of the property. Back in Maidstone, however, Liz and Laura are not digging out the floor to create more head height. Instead, they're laying a PVC damp-proof course and screeding on top of the existing floor, but are leaving the walls as they are. This means the cellar will feel even more cramped, and because they're leaving the walls, it will still be damp. I would never advise doing a half job. Either do it properly or not at all. But will Liz and Laura listen?
I'm worried about you spending this amount of money on it when it can't be a habitable room because of the ventilation problems. You haven't got ventilation, and the head height. Once you've built up the floor to make it level. Sort of level and not damp, it's you're going to have to be vertically challenged to be able to walk around in it. Purely in terms of profit and purely in terms of developing a property, there probably isn't that much point in doing it.
No. What about the visual effects, though?
No,
Because psychologically,
right.
people have to buy, don't they?
She is right.
We know
Everybody's
that, but
told
we
us.
can't try and talk her into believing
The
us.
estate agents have told us it's a complete waste of time as well.
In my experience, converting a cellar can be like digging a hole and pouring money into it. There is no way I would have touched it in this development. But I get the feeling my advice is falling on deaf ears.
Sarah's quite right. If we didn't do the basement, we would have another £1,000 to do on the garden.
To take into account all the extras that probably will take it up a bit.
But
we're
still determined to do that basement, aren't we?
Yeah.
Liz and Laura are just playing at houses. Unless they start thinking like real property developers, they're in danger of blowing their development.
But they're not kind, are they?
They still think that making a property look nice is enough to sell the house and make their profit. And undeterred by mounting costs 5 weeks into the project, Liz and Laura have gone shopping for furniture and props to dress their development.
Creamy lilac. We could have all three.
All three of those would be good.
Yeah.
Oh, look at these.
So how much have you spent on all of this furniture?
We haven't added it up yet.
Probably best not to.
I think so.
So now tell me about your budget, because you gave me a copy of your budget. Right. And this was what you were planning on spending. Obviously it doesn't include refurnishing the house.
It includes everything that has to stay. Everything that can go, we haven't actually put into there.
It turns out they have already spent £1,500 on furniture, but they say they will use it in future projects, so they don't count it as an outlay for this development.
Because the point is you do really need to... The money's not... It's coming from somewhere, and you need to add that onto the cost of doing this development, because even if you take it with you, well, that's great. Next time you don't have to spend the money, but it is a cost of doing this development. If you did no more development at all, if this was your only house,
then it would be
part of your cost.
The only way that Liz and Laura can afford to give up their day jobs and become developers is if they make their profit. In order to do this, they must get back on track with their budget.
So I'm just worried that £5,000 budget is looking deeply scary.
When I first met Liz and Laura 3 years ago, their dream was to give up window dressing and start property developing. However, 8 weeks into their build, their budget was spent and they were still going ahead with the expensive and unnecessary cellar makeover. For them to make any serious money, I needed to show them how to start shaving costs.
Where's the bath?
That's in the skip outside.
Why? Why is it in the skip?
That's what the estate agents recommended. They said that people like a new, fresh, plastic, clean bathroom. Despite the fact that it was very traditional and it was a lovely bath.
They said that enamel bath people don't like because they're not easy to clean, they chip easily, and people like to see white, shiny plastic, and they're cold. The enamel baths are.
Well, they're wrong.
So ours is in the skip. So what are we going to do?
Well, I think we should get it back out to the skip. Come on, let's get it. And it'll save you loads of money. What a stupid thing I got. Absolutely ridiculous. Yes, get it out. Now, get it out.
In this case, I think Liz and Laura took their estate agent's advice too literally. As a general rule, buyers do like new bathroom suites, but Liz and Laura must cut back their spending and use whatever is at their disposal. They can easily save themselves £300 by changing the taps on their old bath and giving it a good clean.
You see this pipe here?
Yeah.
Which runs up from the...
Luckily, Liz's partner Martin is a qualified plumber, so he's been recruited to save on costs.
I'm not getting paid for it. I'm doing it for love. Otherwise she'd have to get a plumber in to do this, which she'd have to pay them.
To save on more costs, Liz and Laura are taking advantage of yet more family and friends. Laura's family are glaziers and have offered to supply all the mirrors in the cellar for free. They're also replacing the patterned glass in the bathroom window with clear glass, providing a view into the garden and the countryside beyond. When you're developing a property, it's vital you include the garden in your plans if you want to get the top price for your house. But Liz and Laura are taking advantage of another friend's goodwill to design and landscape the garden for free. But this is no way to go about running a business. Not only does it mean that their budget is completely unrealistic, but there can be an even bigger price to pay. Liz's partner Martin is not happy about the way things are working out.
Be honest with you, I mean, I'd love to have been involved from the start and take some of the profit as well, but it's obviously their project, so they want to keep all the profit themselves. They don't want to share it out with anyone, but they're quite happy to take the help of us.
But I wanted to hear Liz's side of the story.
We have difficulty in getting across to both Vic and Martin that this is a business venture. It's not just a fun thing, you know, we intend to make it a business venture. And we wouldn't include them in new contracts for dressing windows or exhibition stands, so...
So has that been probably the hardest thing, is the fact that he'd really like to have done it as well?
That's right, yes, I think so, probably.
But Liz and Laura aren't treating this like a business. While their friends and family are helping them finish their development, they're already scouring the auction catalogues for their next property. They bought their property at auction and without a survey. But they've been incredibly lucky, as the house doesn't have any major structural problems. This time at least they're determined not to act on impulse.
Your survey at 152.5. I'm going to withdraw the remaining...
They've come to this auction house as observers to familiarise themselves with the process. Buying a property at auction can be risky, as they often sell run-down properties that require major structural work. So unless you have extensive building experience, I would always advise you to get expert advice before committing to any property. As their 12-week deadline approaches, the strain is starting to show. They have split the remaining jobs between them to speed things up. Laura is finishing off the kitchen downstairs. They're both feeling the pressure.
We've had a lot of window dressing jobs this week. We haven't had any time at the house really, so as a result we've been working really late all this week, because we wanted to sort of get ourselves on target, because on the 25th of July we've got the carpets going down, so obviously it's in our interest to get things completed.
There is no doubt that Liz and Laura are working very hard to get this development finished.
Morning. Morning. Oh, what have you got?
Oh, I've got lots of goodies the other night.
Oh, go on.
But they're still spending money like water on props to dress the house. It's proving difficult for them to shake off their 25 years as window dressers.
3 like this on the bathroom wall and put the flannels in them.
This is just frittering their profit away, as they haven't budgeted a penny for staging.
I got this from the charity shop as well, to hang on one of our pegs in the...
Oh, yeah, it goes with the...
Yeah,
I dread to think what their final budget will be. With kitchen in and the carpets down, most developers would consider the house finished, but not Liz and Laura. They're now in their element. It's like an empty window for them, and they're dressing it without a thought for their budget.
That's it, look, billowing. We've got to open the window now, or someone's got to blow from outside.
They have also wholeheartedly embraced the fleur-de-lis emblem in their design. On a development like this, such attention to detail is pure indulgence.
A balloon whisk silver fleur-de-lis.
I think it's a bit subtle, really. I don't think anyone else is going to notice, apart from, well, we'll have the satisfaction
of knowing, yeah.
That'll look nice up against the white tiles.
But property developing is not about doing things for your own satisfaction. It is all about profit. And as their new furniture arrives, I worry that Liz and Laura have completely lost sight of this. You do need money in your budget to furnish and put the finishing touches in your house, but you have to know where to stop. It's no surprise that their original £5,000 budget is a dim and distant memory.
Ooh, it's like Christmas time.
Christmas may have come early to Maidstone, but at this rate, come December the 25th, they'll have no money left to put a turkey on the table. It's exactly 12 weeks since Liz and Laura started work on this house in Maidstone. The furniture is in, and they're doing what they know and love best, putting in the finishing touches. Their hard work, plus the goodwill of family and friends, means they are bang on schedule.
Laura and I stayed until, well, Laura went home at 4 and I went to bed at 5. I actually stayed here last night so that we could really catch up and be ready for today. There's still quite a lot of little finishing bits to do, but I guess that's always there in every house, isn't it?
So with the finishing touches done, how does the property look?
We've noticed some changes.
The finished product. This is fantastic.
So what do you think?
Oh, it looks amazing. You've obviously spent a long time dressing it as your window dressers.
It was the best bit, of course. Looks different, doesn't it, to when you last saw it?
Fantastic. These two rooms work so well together.
I think that Liz and Laura have done a great job transforming these two dark and dingy rooms into bright, modern and very appealing reception rooms. They have replaced the old 60s fireplaces with a Victorian surround and grate and used furniture to suggest how each reception room could be used. However, I do think that the decor is a bit girly, and although the rooms do look good, I don't think that this look will appeal to everyone's taste. The once pokey kitchen now seems larger and more inviting. Moving the cellar door was a great idea. But they could have saved money by leaving spaces for modern appliances like a dishwasher. They could also have saved money and made the room feel bigger by cutting back on wall units. I think they've created a great kitchen, but the white and black colour scheme is a very definite style statement. And I think the dark worktop and splashback might put some buyers off. It isn't helped by the very feminine accessories which have been used to style the room. Outside, the back garden has also been transformed. The clever use of curves and shapes makes this narrow garden feel wider. It now boasts a grass area and separate seating areas, which should impress any would-be buyer. But they did rely on the goodwill of friends to get it done. Upstairs, the bathroom has been revamped. I'm glad to see Liz and Laura saved money by keeping their old bathroom suite. The new clear glass window makes the room much lighter. They have used very striking tiles and wooden panelling on the walls. But I worried these might not be to everyone's taste. And they've fallen into the same trap in here as they did downstairs. They have over-accessorised the room, making it feel very personal. Liz and Laura have also spent a small fortune on furnishing the bedrooms, with expensive big wrought iron beds. The main room does look good, but on such a small budget, I think they would have been better off borrowing beds from their own houses rather than wasting money they don't have. What is more, they have made a mistake with the smaller bedroom.
And this looks a bit better, doesn't it? Great.
The yellow room.
The only thing is about this bed, it's a lovely bed, but you want to make sure that the furniture you use in a room is in proportion to the room. And having a bed this big in this room does make the room feel smaller. So personally, I feel that you would have been better with a smaller bed. And it does feel as though you really couldn't actually do anything but have a bed in here.
Liz and Laura have made another big mistake with this house, spending money on their cellar. In true window dressers style, they have given it a full cosmetic makeover.
Cellar here does look fantastic. I totally give you that. And the way it's staged maximises its potential. But you've spent £1,000 on it, and it does smell of damp, and the head height isn't adequate. And my feeling is that whoever buys this house might look at this and think that they'd be able to use this room, and it'll be a little bit down the line that they'll realise that it doesn't actually comply with the regulations that are required, and that it is damp. Maybe their surveyor will look at it, and their surveyor should pick up that it does have damp issues, because the carpet on the floor looks great now, but in a year or two's time it will smell and be mouldy.
I really hope the seller isn't their undoing, but I think it's time Laura and Liz faced facts about their overspend.
Now, I know you've spent £1,900 on staging this property, which, considering your total budget for the building works was £5,000, that's quite...
Sounds awful, Sarah, when you say it like that.
Well, it is quite awful, really. It's a lot of money to spend out of a £5,000 budget.
They originally budgeted £2,100 for the kitchen, but by installing it themselves, they only spent £1,310. They had budgeted £700 for the bathroom and garden, but managed to cut this down to £450 by using their friends and family to do most of the work. Their original budget for decoration, including flooring and lighting, was £1,200. This cost eventually came in at £1,350. But it's the building budget where their plans really start to fall apart. They had budgeted £1,000, but during the development this escalated to £3,090, 3 times their original estimate. There was nothing in the original budget for staging the property. The final cost of all these props was a colossal £1,900. This brings the total renovation costs to £8,100. If you include fees and mortgage repayments, their total cost comes to £12,300. And that's not including any of the free labour and materials they had, which, if they'd been forced to pay, would have cost them at least another £2,500.
How much did you think that you'd actually spent? Are you surprised that you spent £12,300 doing this project?
Yes, I'm extremely surprised. I had no idea.
How much did you think you'd spent?
9,000, maybe 10,000.
12 weeks ago, Liz and Laura bought their property for £90,000. Their budget of £5,000 rose dramatically to £12,300, discounting their freebies. This makes the total investment in this property £102,300. 12 weeks ago, the ceiling price for this type of property was £110,000. If they sell it for this amount, they only stand to make a profit of £7,700 before tax. However, at the beginning of this project, Liz and Laura hoped to cash in on the rising market and sell their property for £120,000. Their whole career path now rests on the estate agent's verdicts.
Beautiful. Nice light airy colours.
One extravagance.
Wow, look at this, yes. Surprised there's a bed down here to sleep down.
It was like
I thought there might be.
Bedroom 1.
Yes, this is the one we left the colours for.
Great size.
I think as far as price is concerned, you could try it up to a maximum of about 125.
I think you're looking probably at around 120 to 125,000.
The price that we're looking at is just above the 120, up to 125.
This means, with a total investment of £102,300, a sale at full asking price of £125,000 would give Liz and Laura a £22,700 profit. A fantastic achievement. This valuation might seem exciting, but it's important to remember the reason this property has been valued at such a high price is because of the rise in the market and not what they've done to the house. In fact, if they had done nothing at all, the value of their property would have risen £15,000, just like every similar house in their area.
Oh, it's really nice.
The estate agent's news is still good, but none of it counts until the house is sold. Liz and Laura put the house on the market for £125,000, and their estate agent immediately brings round potential buyers.
Lovely.
This man loves the house, but is already thinking of the changes he would make to the property.
I mean, myself, I'd have to redecorate the place all over again anyway.
What's that?
Well, I mean, to put our own colours in things.
Oh.
Yeah, and sand down the windows and more like repaint.
As far as this buyer is concerned, Liz and Laura could have just painted the walls magnolia.
We'd like to make an offer on it.
Really?
Yes, we would.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, definitely.
Definitely.
Lovely. Yes.
We'd like to make an offer right now, actually.
So, a result. The second person through the door offers the full asking price. Liz and Laura have done well, but the crux of property developing is spending as little as possible to create the biggest results. They could have cut back dramatically and made even more profit. And are you planning on carrying on developing?
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
Just got to find another house.
The great thing about looking for a second development is that you get to cash in on all the hard-earned experience from your first one. And with prices in Maidstone still rising, Liz and Laura had the market on their side. After just 8 weeks of searching, they bought their next project. A 3-bedroomed end-of-terrace property just a stone's throw from their last development.
As soon as we saw the property, we knew things we would like to do and that we were capable of doing.
And that were cost-effective.
This was the perfect development for these two, as the house hadn't been touched since the 1960s and needed a full Liz and Laura makeover. After 3 months' hard graft, the house is back on the market, which is an ideal turnaround for a project like this. And I'm Liz and Laura's first viewer.
Now this looks very smart.
Yes, this is our Magnolia Lounge.
So you've gone more neutral. Well, it looks great.
Yeah, and we've reused the furniture again from the other house.
So all my
Minus the
tickings off
champagne.
about all your money on furniture was unfair. You've reused it. Well done.
The house certainly looks great. The question is, have they made any money?
On your last development, you went seriously over budget, didn't you? Did you go over budget on this development as well?
No, because we were able to sit down and do a realistic budget on this one.
Yeah, having looked at the property and realised what it needed.
So actually it was because your last budget wasn't realistic, and this time round you set a realistic budget.
They bought it for £106,000, budgeted £21,500 and sold it for nearly £145,000, which left them a gross profit of just under £17,500. Not bad for 12 weeks' work. I prefer this toned-down version of Liz and Laura's trademark finishes. But a development is only a success when the cash is in the bank. And after 2 buyers drop out, it takes 6 long months to sell. That means in 16 months they've only made £20,000 each, which is not enough to give up their day jobs.
Time is money with property developing. Taking 6 months to shift a property doesn't make financial sense. For their next development, Liz and Laura need to find a property that they can turn around quickly.
But after months of looking, Liz and Laura can't find what they want, and so settle on this. 3,500 square foot of land. Liz and Laura plan to build not 1, but 2 new houses. But from where I'm standing, that seems a long way off.
It's quite a drastic step, isn't it, to have gone from a terrace cottage that you sort of redecorated, and then you've gone to another terrace cottage that you redecorated and put some plumbing in, to building 2 new houses.
Well, it's a challenge, isn't it?
It certainly is.
We like challenges, Sarah.
Yes.
With no planning permission in place and no architect on board, I can't help feeling that this isn't quite the quick turnaround project that Liz and Laura need. Building from scratch does give you good returns, but the risks are much greater, and I can't help thinking Liz and Laura are overstretching themselves.
And do you know anything about building a new house?
Bought a book.
Yeah, and we've seen some architects now, so we know a little bit more.
Right.
And it can't be that difficult. It's more overseeing than building it ourselves.
You know,
we're not going to sit down and physically do it ourselves.
No. But you know that when you come to sell a new built house, if it doesn't have the correct certificates, it can be very difficult to sell it.
Yeah. Yes.
So you do need to make sure that it's approved by a body to make sure that it's properly built.
About 6 viewings, apparently, throughout construction.
Yeah, so you're aware of that?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Read that chapter.
After 4 months, Liz and Laura finally decide on their budget. If they sell the houses for £240,000 each, they stand to make over £100,000 gross profit between them. But this all depends on whether they get their planning permission.
We've just heard from the planning office, and we haven't got our houses to be built. They haven't allowed it to
The
be
new build
built.
houses have been turned down.
But we won't let this dishearten us.
We will continue.
Watch this space.
And true to their word, Liz and Laura don't give up on their dream of the new builds. They've reapplied for planning, and in the meantime, to help with their cash flow, they've bought another property in Maidstone. I came to property number 4 to catch up with them.
Hello. How are you? This is great.
When I first met you, you were determined to develop full time, and you're still really good friends and still as determined.
Yes, we are.
This is definitely going to be the way forward, is it?
Yeah.
For £130,000, Liz and Laura have bought a 4-bedroom terraced property in the centre of town. And if they get planning permission, they hope to turn it into 2 flats. But they only have a budget of £40,000, and I think they're expecting a lot.
Do you think it might have been better if you had bought another property, instead of buying your 4th property needing planning, bought another property that you could turn around, get the turnover done quickly and get the cash coming back in?
We could have actually renovated probably 2 houses, just straightforward renovations in between, if we'd realised the time involved.
So what do you hope to sell them for if you get the planning?
Between 125 and 130 each.
Gosh, so that would clear you about £80,000 profit on this development if you get the planning.
If the planning is declined, then we will renovate it as a house, just as a single dwelling.
When there's a market for flats, a conversion is a great way to make money. Liz and Laura stand to make £80,000 with planning, but without, they'll only make £10,000.
And what's in here? It's a cellar.
It's our trademark.
It is. And what are you going to be doing with the cellar this time?
Absolutely nothing.
So unlike your first development, you're not going to be spending any money on the cellar.
A wise move, as on this project they need every penny and can't spend money on something with no return.
So is property developing living up to your expectations?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it certainly has.
It's been interesting, met lots of new contacts and learned a lot as well.
Do you really think you'll ever be able to give up window dressing?
Depending on the outcome on this one, if we get enough money from this one, then yes, then that changes the whole situation. The whole
That
building.
makes it possible for us to put more time into this business as opposed to the window dressing.
Where do you think you'll be in 5 years' time then?
In the south of France on my yacht.
Yeah.
Liz and Laura got into developing hoping it was going to be a real money spinner, but the last 2 years has shown them how hard developing can be. But they are making money.
Liz and Laura are £40,000 better off than they were 3 years ago, and that's not to be sneered at. Though they can't afford to give up their day jobs yet, if their next 2 projects go well, then their property developing ventures may be more than just a very lucrative sideline.
Next week I'm off to catch up with Philip and Stephen, who risked everything by giving up their high-paid jobs in London to develop a rundown barn in Lincolnshire.
This is the first thing that you've done?
Yes.
And you've never done any building work before?
No.
You're mad!